Now, what I'm going to tell you next is a true story. It might sound unbelievable, like the script of a Hollywood thriller, but trust me, this is what happened. A dictator has hijacked an international flight. He sent a fighter jet to bring down a commercial plane flying over his country's airspace, all because he wanted a critic arrested. Let's start from the beginning. The man we are talking about is Alexander Lukashenko, 66 years old, the president of Belarus, better known as Europe's last dictator. Last year, he hijacked his country's presidential election. There were massive protests. He flew over protesters in his chopper. You see that? The president is in that chopper. Thousands testified to his regime's ruthlessness. Lukashenko became a familiar name worldwide, and now he's back in the news. This time for hijacking an international flight. It happened on Sunday, the 23rd of May. An international flight flying over Belarus was intercepted mid-air. It was forced to land in Minsk, the capital of Belarus. Why was this done? Because there was a journalist on this flight, a journalist who had criticized Lukashenko. So the president brought down this plane to settle scores with the journalist. Have you heard of anything like this before? Who is this journalist? His name is Roman Protasevich. He's 26 years old. He had left Belarus in 2019. He covered the 2020 presidential election and the protests from neighboring Lithuania. And thanks to his coverage, he was branded a terrorist. He reported last year's anti-Lukashenko protests, and now he faces the death penalty in Belarus. The journalist was on board a Ryanair flight. The plane took off from Athens in Greece. It was on its way to Vilnius in Lithuania. That's when the flight was nearing its destination, the pilot suddenly announced that the plane was being diverted and that it will now be landing in Belarus's capital, Minsk. Why? The pilot gave no reason. Turns out that he was informed by the Belarusian air traffic control about a possible threat to the plane. The flight was directed to divert to the nearest airport, which was at Minsk. The instruction had come from Lukashenko. He then ordered a MiG-29 to escort the passenger plane. Lukashenko's press secretary claims the president was informed about a bomb threat. Turns out there was no bomb on board. Instead, the moment the plane landed, it was stormed by Belarusian security. Roman, the journalist, was taken off the plane. Dogs were seen sniffing his luggage. His passport was seized and he was arrested. Eyewitnesses on the plane say that the journalist knew what was in store for him. The moment the pilot announced the diversion, this 26-year-old man apparently got up from his seat, reached out for his cabin luggage, pulled out his laptop, handed it to his partner. He also gave his cell phone to her. But upon landing, Belarusian authorities also arrested the journalist's partner. As for the rest of the passengers, they were moved to the Minsk terminal, and after several hours of waiting and standing in long queues for passport and luggage checks, they were allowed to reboard the flight. The aircraft was cleared for takeoff. It finally landed in its destination nearly 8 hours after its scheduled arrival. Some of the passengers recalled the events upon landing in Lithuania.
They just came and first of all they took the guy, the journalist, out from the plane, and then they started disembarking the passengers, and then we were all questioned and not questioned, like checked and waited in lines and so on.
We are very tired. We were 8 hours there. We didn't get any information what happened, only what we could find on internet. We sat there and with no information.
It's not normal. You can have this power to do this, and I think our government should not accept that, and it should be some sanctions about Belarus to have doing that. They can pretend there is a bomb alert to stop your plane, so for sure it was not true. The dog was more here to cover their excuse, but the fact is they just wanted to arrest a man, so they impacted the day of all of more than hundreds of people.
This is straight out of a movie. The state-sponsored hijack has left the global aviation sector stunned. European countries are furious. What was Belarus thinking? Did Lukashenko think he would get away with this conspiracy? Perhaps he did. He has powerful backers. The dictator enjoys the patronage of Russia. It was with Kremlin support that Lukashenko crushed the pro-democracy protests. He is now going after dissidents in what looks like a plot straight out of Kremlin's playbook. Ryanair CEO has said that there were some Belarusian KGB agents on board the plane.
I think it was very frightening for the crew, for the passengers who were held under armed guard, had their bags searched when it was clear, it appears, that the intent of the Russian authorities was to remove a journalist and his travelling companion. And, you know, we believe there was also some KGB agents offloaded off the aircraft as well.
The companion he spoke about is a Russian citizen, Roman's partner. She is currently under arrest in Belarus, but Russia has come out in support of Lukashenko's regime. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Belarus treated the incident with quote-unquote absolutely reasonable approach. The European Union, meanwhile, has already called for the immediate release of the journalist. NATO's Secretary General Stoltenberg called the hijacking, and I'm quoting, a serious and dangerous incident. Ireland, the home country of Ryanair, has called for a tough response from Brussels. Latvia and Lithuania say the Belarusian airspace should be branded unsafe. This is Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė.
It is an unprecedented attack against an international community. A civilian plane and its passengers have been hijacked by military force, and Belarusian citizen has been abducted and his life and health are in danger. It is unjustifiable that ordinary international travelers have been held hostage to the regime's aggression. Lithuania will demand a clear and uncompromising response from the international community. The airspace of Belarus is unsafe for everyone.
The United Nations Agency for Civil Aviation, ICAO, has said the forced landing could be quote-unquote in contravention of the Chicago Convention, meaning Belarus has flouted international airspace and air safety rules. The implication could be huge, especially for a landlocked country. Europe is mulling possible sanctions against Belarus. The EU is Belarus's second largest trade partner. It accounts for over 18% of the country's trade. So far, the European Union has already imposed 3 rounds of sanctions. This was following last year's protests. As we speak, several European flights are being diverted to avoid Belarusian airspace. Will the EU ban Belarusian flights from its airspace too? No decision has been taken on that yet. What does the regime have to say about the entire hijacking episode? Belarus maintains that the plane was diverted and grounded because of a bomb threat. The act of state terrorism apparently had nothing to do with the journalist's arrest. The argument has virtually no takers though, because this is not the first journalist being jailed for covering protests against Lukashenko. Although so far the crackdowns were limited to home in Belarus within its borders. Now with the hijack of an international flight and the harassment of a foreign passenger, Lukashenko has triggered questions about possible NATO intervention. The episode has also raised important and justified concerns about the freedom of air and the safety of air travel. Should flights be diverted from states that sponsor terrorism? What about asylum seekers? Are they not safe anywhere in the world? Can regimes be allowed to target dissidents abroad? These are questions that must be answered sooner rather than later. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.